It's men's finals night. The pre-judging is complete, and coming into the finals, Flex Wheeler is in first place, just 10 points ahead of arch-rival Chris Cormier. The time has finally come for the contestants to put on a show for the fans, and especially the judges. This is the moment the finalists have trained and sacrificed so much for in the past few months. Being on stage, posing their way to the title of the greatest body on the planet.
I've had enough to keep that mouth shut before I call you bluff.
On stage, it's dark. It's so lit up, the stage is so lit up that I can't even see out in the audience, and I'm really comfortable, and I just kind of surround myself in the music, and just like nothing else is out there, and I just feel really at home.
It's exhausting. People don't understand. A lot of people call it an art form, which it is, but it's also a sport, especially because of the posing aspect. It takes a lot out of you. You have to really be in shape, cardiovascular-wise too, because you are squeezing force of blood in the muscle. It's such extreme pressure, So that's why you see a lot of guys getting woozy and having trouble. It's hard for some guys.
In addition to an increased cardiovascular regimen in the weeks leading up to a contest, competitors will also undergo carb depletion. They cut out carbohydrates from their diet to pull the water out from between the muscle and skin. The resulting effect is better muscle definition, making the body look harder, fuller, and more vascular.
When they reach the contest, they're in a pretty depleted state in terms of having got rid of all the fatty deposits they can in the body. And the posing is something where they try and make it look easy with a big smile, but they're really crunching away. And when they're crunching 20-inch arms and 32-inch thighs for 3 or 4 minutes at a time, it really takes a lot out of them. And there's a lot of adrenaline there as well, because it's the climax of the contest. It's the last chance to impress the judges.
I want to bring back on stage contestant number 1, Flex Wheeler.
The judges narrow the field from 17 to just 6, and still very little separates Flex and Chris. Muscle for muscle, the judges take a final look.
And that's a really exciting part of the show, because that's where it gets really crazy and the crowd gets into it and everybody's really hustling. Because you got to understand, $100,000 is a lot of money, and all 6 of those guys want $100,000. So it's intense. It's very competitive. It's all about money now.
The most successful professionals in their peak years are running into $250,000 a year and above.
But just as in any sport at world-class level, the odds of making it as a member of the pro bodybuilding elite are minuscule.
There's 20,000 athletes out there who compete during a calendar year. Out of that, only about 5 or 6 will get into the pro ranks the following year. And those 5 or 6, maybe only 1 or 2 will make it to be a successful pro, maybe.
As the money got bigger over the years, so did the competition. And as the level of competition grew, so did the size of the athletes and their muscles. At 5 feet 9.5 inches and 237 pounds, Flex Wheeler is a much larger athlete than bodybuilders competing 30 years ago.
You take Arnold, for example. Arnold's 6'2" and weighed 230, 235 pounds in his prime when he was competing. Now we have men on stage at 5'11", 6 foot, who are on stage competing at 280 pounds.
As a consequence, if you put an athlete from the 60s on the stage with men and women today, well, they would look like amateurs.
This has led critics of the sport to wonder how safe it is for the athletes to continue growing at such phenomenal rates.
I'm a little concerned that there is so much attention given to massive muscles these days that someone is really going to run out of time on the stage, as it were, and collapse. And the interesting thing about bodybuilding is that it's kind of a laboratory for sports experimentation. And it's always about 10 or 15 years ahead of football and swimming and other sports.
The use of performance-enhancing drugs by professional athletes has always been a controversial issue, with the sport of bodybuilding at the forefront.
Bodybuilding and drugs is just like any other sport in drugs. We're just more open about it, and we understand it more, and we don't hide it, and we don't put our head in the sand like other sports do. If you think all the home runs that are being hit are because pitching is poor, forget it.
It doesn't matter if you were taking a ton of drugs, if you don't train right and eat right, it's still not going to look anything. If you don't have that natural, I guess, the genetics, you can't improve on something just because you're taking a bunch of drugs.
So why do professional athletes endure what amounts to nothing less than controlled torture to excel in their respective sport?
There's probably millions of people who wish that they're in this position. I mean, even just the opportunity to be the best in the world, that goes down in history. You don't walk away from that. You know, you don't walk away from a blessing like that.
Come on. Wait up. 4. Come on. That's 1.
Whether the motivation is money or just an overwhelming drive to be the best in the world, bodybuilders, helped by chemicals or otherwise, must also be well endowed physically.
Genetics. Straight up. Genetics and hard work.
There's no question that there's a strong genetic compound in the sport of bodybuilding, as there is in most sports. Some people just developed more readily and naturally in response to exercise. And the professional level, the top professionals, why obviously good genetics, good body type helps the athlete when they're competing at the world level.
The pose down is the last chance where these genetically superior athletes can show off their magnificent bodies.
My complete focus is to go in to change 11 people's minds, which are the judges said, I am the best man standing here on stage and I deserve this more than anyone else.
The pose down is over, and the exhausted finalists get called out one by one in reverse order, starting with 6th place.
Please take the 5th runner-up trophy and cash to Gunter Schlierkamp.
The last 2 men standing are Flex Wheeler and Chris Cormier, the man who had beaten him just a week earlier. 2nd place and $45,000 goes to...
That goes to Chris Cormier.
Which makes a very emotional Flex Wheeler, the Arnold Classic champion, and the recipient of a check for $100,000 and the accolade of having the greatest body on the planet.
When I win, I cry. If I lose, cry. But thank God I was crying for a good reason then, you know, and it's just, couldn't describe it, I couldn't even stop crying. And just while I was standing there, everything played back every single freaking time. I was on that damn treadmill in the morning and how much I hated it, you know, it multiplied by my wife not being able to be there because our daughter was 2 weeks old and she had gotten a cold, and that's really dangerous, so that was really hard. And it's like, okay, you know, hard work do pay off sometimes.
I want to thank you, Arnold, for putting on such a great show, and I want to thank you very much, Joe Weider, for starting bodybuilding and giving us a way of life and a living. Thank you. God bless all you. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Flex Wheeler.
For the ecstatic Flex Wheeler, it's another contest over and another paycheck secured. Then it's back to the gym to prepare for the next contest, Mr. Olympia.
I think the most interesting question always, from a human point of view, is where do we go from here? And I think the answer is that there is no real limit physically. We've seen that. We would not have believed 20 years ago that you would reach the level of development for men and women that you see today. And that we will say that when we're looking back from the year 2020, that the physiques of today were great, but we can see now that you can become much greater.